your free tickets to meet Sean Spicer in Chicago on August 8th. Go to 560theanswer.com/briefing.
Good morning, Dan and Amy. Trump is meeting with Putin now in Helsinki, and I just hope Melania is there because I don't want him to get programmed, President Trump to get programmed like Staff Sergeant Raymond Shaw in the Manchurian Candidate.
Oh, yeah, right.
Very concerned about that. President Trump, prior to leaving to jet off to Helsinki for the summit meeting with Putin, sat down with Face the Nation for an interview over the weekend in which he had this to say about the testimony of one Peter Strzok last week before the House Judiciary Committee.
He was a disgrace to our country. He was a disgrace to the FBI. So when I look at things like that, and he led that investigation, or whatever you call it, I would say that, yeah, I think it hurts our relationship with Russia. I actually think it hurts our relationship with a lot of countries. I think it's a disgrace what's going on. And then you look how partisan it is. You look at what's going on where, and they know that there's no way he can get away from those horrible texts that he wrote. So the other side knows, but it's a very partisan thing.
Indeed it is. And Devin Nunes made a similar point on a different topic with Maria Bartiromo over the weekend. This in response to the indictments that were handed down by Mueller on Friday, 12 Russian intelligence officers, operatives who were allegedly the hackers. Nunes saying, the Mueller indictment essentially follows the report that my committee issued on Russian hacking, the efforts to meddle in the election, that was made public back at the end of April of this year, that was known by Team Mueller months before.
There's more in this report than what's in the indictment. Okay, and this is what's very frustrating. So it's great that they indicted Russians. Yes, they did bad things. I mean, they're always up to bad things. We know that. They have very sophisticated intelligence capabilities in Russia. And they're constantly attacking the United States and our allies. However, in the indictment, they leave out some really important people that they also went after. So the indictment plays like they were only going after the Democrats, when Bob Mueller and all his investigators and his lawyers know for a fact that they also targeted Republicans. Why is that not in the indictment? It makes the indictment look ridiculous. And then it looks like all the Mueller team did was validate our report, indict some Russians, and leave out, I think, some very pertinent relative of evidence that the American public should see, which is, why we continue to have to fight. This report has been mocked by the media, has been mocked by the Democrats, and still is mostly redacted by the Department of Justice and the intelligence agencies.
And didn't they even hack the Illinois GOP?
The FBI informed the Illinois Republican Party at the end of 2016 that some of their emails had been hacked. They didn't tell them as part of this Russian investigation at the time, and that this had happened some 6 months earlier. So yes, the way this is covered is like this is some revelation, or there is anybody who doesn't believe that Russians were involved in hacking and attempting to meddle and so on and so forth. The issue is the collusion aspect of it, which Mueller has advanced in no material way, it seems to me, by indicting 12 people who are never going to step foot on American soil. But for more on this, we're pleased to be joined again by our friend James Fitzgerald. He is the famed FBI special agent, now retired, and criminal profiler from the Unabomber case. He and his team were the ones who solved the Unabomber case. He's also the author of a series of books, A Journey to the Center of the Mind, that was in part turned into this great Netflix series, the Unabomber case, called Manhunt, where Sam Worthington plays Fitzgerald and Paul Bettany plays Ted Kaczynski. Really, really good series. Really interesting. A lot of, if you vaguely remember the case, but you don't remember the details and how it all played out, the series does that for you. It's pretty riveting. James Fitzgerald, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Good morning, Dan. Good morning, Amy, and everybody out in Chicago. Great to be back on again.
Thank you. And so why don't we start with Peter Strzok and his performance before the House Judiciary Committee last week, and give us your assessment of the damage that Strzok and Page, in particular, just those two, have done to the FBI now that everybody has seen Peter Strzok publicly.
Well, I'm a linguist, a forensic linguist, and words interest me. And I think we can maybe actually come up with a new word here. and it can be applied to similar situations, and that would be a Strzokism. And what essentially that is when something about a person is provably, demonstrably true, but he or she still lies about it anyway, despite all indications otherwise. So if we can every once in a while throw that in our interview here today,
adding that
what
to my lexicon.
Strzokism that is.
Yeah.
It also reminds me of an 18th century literary character named Baron Munchausen. And this guy was known to have told all these fantastical lies throughout his career, and there were books and movies made about it, years later. But that's who I see in this Peter Strzok. And then I have to hit myself every once in a while. Oh, that's right. He's an FBI agent just like I used to be, and he's sitting in front of national TV, in front of a House Judiciary Committee, and providing testimony that is so blatantly false, so contradictory to what he actually put on paper or made digital with the text messages and emails from his government phone. We haven't even seen his private phone or other private email messages yet. So I can only imagine how much is in there that, where he's attempting to, further destroy our democracy, quite frankly, from his desk in his office on the 7th floor of the FBI headquarters back in 2016 and well into 17. So very unimpressive testimony on his part. And again, me, along with many other FBI agents, retired, still on the job, very disappointed. He is now the face of the FBI.
But there was no contrition on his part. He tried to justify what he meant by saying, well, that day President Trump, besmirched a Gold Star Father Khan, and that's, why I, said that we will stop it. I mean, he made really no sense. And the fact that he still has security clearance is unbelievable.
Yeah, it's almost like reverse engineering. He just said these things. That's his default mentality. And then I'm sure all of a sudden when they get released, he goes back and checks the media, does some website searches. Oh, that's right. He came out and said this about Khan, which Trump, he wasn't denigrating Khan's service or anything like that. Just, pointing out some things that his father had said in the Democratic National Convention of all places. So that's what Strzok uses as an excuse. And in that particular Strzokism, there I used the word,
yes.
In that particular part of his testimony.
We'll do the best we can to popularize Strzokism. But let me ask you about Strzok's essential argument. He presented as exculpatory, and simpletons on the left have tried to pick this up, the fact that I had information about candidate Trump that I did not leak to the press or otherwise disclose proves that I had no bias in terms of the conduct of my investigation.
Yeah, note to Mr. Strzok, you shouldn't be releasing information like that to the media anyway. That is an ethical violation at a minimum, and possibly a criminal violation at the maximum. So what, you want a medal or another Purple Heart, as he was awarded by a Dem, for not doing something wrong, when at the meantime you knew you had other people around you that were releasing information about matters either related to that investigation or other issues about Trump. And again, he also felt from almost his own testimony, as well as Comey's and others, why bother even releasing some of this stuff? Because we're pretty sure Trump's going to win and Trump's going to lose and Hillary's going to win. So it's almost like we don't have to even worry about doing this stuff. This is like our little back pocket thing, just in case things really get hairy as we get closer, whatever. But the polls weren't indicating that, as wrong as they were, and they felt they could hold back on that. So for him to put some kind of a medal on his chest and try to prove his alleged objectivity and non-biased behavior, because he didn't do something questionably illegal, that doesn't hold water with me or many other FBI agents to whom I have been discussing this particular guy. And
he also mischaracterized the Horowitz report, suggesting there's no proof that I did anything that was demonstrably biased. And that's not really what the Horowitz report says. It says I can't prove it, but there are certainly indications of bias being present. Essentially was the argument that was made by Horowitz. I don't have a smoking gun, so you're going to have to interpret what he did that I'm documenting however you want, because I can't get inside his head. And Kim Strassel at the Wall Street Journal, I thought, asked the great question after his testimony on Thursday, which is, if you knew if you were the one being investigated and you knew the investigator had demonstrated so much animus towards you, would you feel like you were getting a fair shake? And nobody would feel that way. And I just wonder what you and FBI colleagues of yours think about all that Strzok said and texted and so forth. I mean, is there any precedent for that at the FBI being so, antagonistic towards the subject of an investigation based on their political disposition? And but then also saying, well, I set that aside to conduct my professional duties. Is that credible?
Yeah, he makes it sound so simple in doing so, setting this part aside like he has a wall of some sort down the middle of his brain where, all right, this is my investigative side as an FBI agent, and this is my political side, and the twain shall never meet. And we know that just doesn't work. The brain doesn't work that way. And look, I've worked cases over the years. I worked mostly criminal cases in my life, even as a profiler, although after 9/11, we got more and more involved in assessing terrorists and terrorism, how to approach a certain guy, an interview strategy. And the rules are different. It's not so much about probable cause or actually gaining evidence to put together your case. And going back to the Inspector General's report, while there is no evidence or testimonial evidence of this doing that, all that means is, they couldn't present that in court in front of a jury and have that as direct evidence in a particular case. It could arguably be circumstantial evidence, but in the counterintelligence world, you don't need any of that stuff, because rarely do these agents work to build cases to make arrests. It's all about identifying somebody, maybe putting him under arrest, and then making a trade somewhere down the line for somebody on your side who got caught overseas. So their rules are completely different, and the stuff they were doing in the Trump investigation, to me, seems like these rules were very loosey-goosey. Now, I like to actually quote Michael Goodwin from the New York Post, who thought, Comey, McCabe, no doubt Strzok, as well as Lisa Page, thought they were a fourth branch of government that is beyond accountability from the other three. And again, with no probable cause needed, no reasonable doubt had to be worried about in front of a jury somewhere, they could just do what they want and get away with what they want in any attempt that they could to diffuse the potential campaign of Donald Trump, and at the same time, it seems, quite frankly, to hide certain things or diminish certain factors about the Hillary campaign. So all these factors came together. They could not hide their bias. They were stupid enough, and I said this in our last interview, I'm embarrassed that they were just stupid enough to put these things out in the cyber world, knowing that somewhere, someday they would come about. But again, they never thought it would, because Hillary would win, but their whole world collapsed, and they're now walking in the world of Strzokisms to, in fact, survive what they know they've done wrong in 2016 and some into 17.
Well, I mean, and the most concerning part about this is a guy who was there for 26 years.
I don't remember running into Peter Strzok. I may have provided some training to him. He came on in 96. I was there about 10 years at the time. We probably crossed paths somewhere. I certainly did with Mueller, working the anthrax case, and it wasn't going very good under him. It's funny when me and a few other profilers suggested let's move this on in a different direction, that it was finally solved. But it is sad. I'm not sure what his upbringing was like. I'm not sure what his early bureau career was like, who was his training officer. But I'll tell you, somehow, Jupiter aligned with Mars and a few other planets when these people all wound up, at the 7th floor of FBI headquarters together. They were plucked into a political campaign unlike no other that we've ever seen. And lo and behold, they decided to run with it as they did and try their best to bring it downward and defeat democracy. But in the long run, these people were caught, identified, and let's just hope and pray something like this never happens again. The FBI is too good, with too many good people in it, for these four, and there's more, half a dozen around them to have done what they've done. They're wrong. They got caught, and we got to get rid of them one way or the other.
He is James Fitzgerald, retired FBI agent and a celebrated criminal profiler from the Unabomber case in particular, which has been optioned into a Netflix series called Manhunt that you want to check out. Also the author of a series of books, A Journey to the Center of the Mind. James Fitzgerald, thanks as always for joining us. Appreciate it.
You're welcome, folks. See you next time.
And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.